23rd, and the application deadline for that is April 27th. And the structure of that program is we take 10 CEOs, and again, we take them to a structured program of mentoring and all the different things that the CEOs of startups need. So they get an audience with folks who are in the similar boat and who have been there and done it. So that is again starting in May. And finally, I'm personally very excited about Thai Angels. So Thai Seattle Angels was launched last September, and the idea was to democratize the investing process. And what that means is that if you want to become an angel investor, you join our group. All you have to shell out is $8,000 when you become an angel investor, because we invest as a group. And we've invested in the startup, we're about to invest in another startup. Our focus is on B2B tech. So that is our area. And we are looking for folks like yourself who want to either invest or just help with screening, etc. So with that, I think those were some of the announcements I wanted to make. And just in terms of today's program, someday the computer was going to learn to think, and I feel that day has come. So I really want to welcome you all to this exciting discussion on generative AI. I think the timing is impeccable with all the stuff that happened last week with the letter and all the discussion that has started. Again, here at Thai Seattle, we always are looking for industry spotlight events like this, where we take a topic which is very relevant, very current to our lives and our work, and then we generate a dialogue around it. And we try to do the dialogue in a way that different perspectives are represented, whether it's academia, or legal perspective, technology, etc. And in this case, it's all of the above, along with the VC perspective as well. I feel that generative AI fits the mold very well, because there are ardent supporters and detractors who are debating right now on what the future holds and what the implications are. In preparation for this speech, I did ask ChatGPT to give me a quote on what is appropriate for this kind of opening speech. And this one piqued my interest, which said the possibilities of generative AI are limited only by our imagination and creativity. So above all, with a tool like this, the human ingenuity and creativity is needed to make this tool effective, and more importantly, to protect us against the downside of this tool. So again, with that, I definitely want to thank you all for coming here. We've got a very exciting lineup here, so I don't want to take any more time. One last thing I do want to mention is our sponsors, Tech Mahindra. So thank you, Tech Mahindra. They sponsor everything, and I'm truly grateful to a lot of people here. Bharat Krishnaswamy, who is Senior Vice President and Head of High-Tech Vertical at Tech Mahindra, and he's also the Head of Pacific Northwest Business Unit. He's also a charter member at Thai Seattle. So Bharat, thank you, and you're a large team that's working. I'm going to hand it over to Bharat to take it from here, and the next Vijay Bagan. And while he's coming here, just a little secret. I heard rumors that you hired a chatbot to run the Microsoft account.
We don't believe in humans anymore. Thank you so much. For sure, it's a privilege to be here, and thank you guys for coming today. It's ladies and gentlemen, wonderful weather outside, but I know this is Seattle, so thank you again. It's been a lovely interactions over appetizers and wine and beer. But I think we're very excited to be part of the Thai partnership. We've done some exciting events together. Last October, we hosted the 5G event. I think Tech Mahindra, for those who don't know, we're not an event management company. We are a $6 billion strong digital IT services company, and we truly believe in taking some early steps in exciting technologies. And more importantly, to make it real and applicable, right? A lot of you from different walks of life, different industries. ChatGPT is something it's on everybody's mind. Almost, it's the talk of the town, right? But we want to make it real, make sure that this discussion goes well, and we take something out of it. So thank you again for making it today. Again, wonderful to be part of the Tide partnership. It's a very powerful forum. For those of you who have not been part of it, I strongly encourage. It was an excellent, luminaries right from industry experts to academia to startup entrepreneurs. Truly, every conversation with any of the Tide members is very enriching and very rewarding in many ways. So thank you for being here. Pleasure to host you. I'll now hand it over to our newest employee, who's actually our first digital employee. Right, we've got 2,200 employees, all human beings. The 2,221st employee is actually a digital employee. So over to the digital employee to make his introduction. Thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us today to discuss the exciting and rapidly evolving topic of generative AI. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Amit Kaista and I head Microsoft Cloud Business at Tech Mahindra. Hope you had a chance to network and exchange ideas about the immense opportunities that lie ahead of us, including the mixed feelings of excitement and nervousness about the world as it evolves. Over the next few minutes, I will share my thoughts and perspectives over the present landscape, the limitless possibilities it holds, the responsibilities that come with this power, and how we can ensure a sustainable and equitable future for all. So let's dive into this.
Wow. Can you all hear me? Well, thank you very much. Thank you. What a start we had for 2023, isn't it? As we're wrapping 2022, we thought our world of AI is going to be surrounded by the ARs and the VRs and the metas that we'll experience through the clunky headsets, right? But 2023 changed it all. We have a new way to experience AI, generative AI, thanks to OpenAI. I'm not going to talk about what transpired in the last 90 days or 3 months since the ChatGPT was launched. Let's talk about a very specific set of things that have happened in the last maybe 15 days. March 13th, Stanford University announced the release of a module called Alpaca model, which has an ability to run on your devices, on your mobile and desktops to give you the same insights as ChatGPT does on your data without being connected to internet. Amazing. Very soon you will have the capability. We had Microsoft announce Copilot, episode Copilot the same week. We had Google announcing generative AI capabilities coming in the same week. Adobe jumped into the bandwagon. They have a Firefly coming in, which is licensed images. How could NVIDIA be left behind? They have created a platform, easier platform for enterprise to create their large learning models. And we also had some of the great startups. How many have used Midjourney here? Has anybody used Midjourney? Wow. Excellent. So those of you who have used Midjourney, they released the first AI magazine, and it has an ability, and the Midjourney 5 has actually producing some of the images that are in best with one of the best photographers that are releasing have clicked. Amazing software. Then you get Runaway ML and so forth. I think the point being that there's so much of excitement, there's so much of buzz going on. What we thought would take probably years or maybe 6 months to get announced, we are seeing announcements happening every day. In fact, if you open up, every announcements have happened every day in the last 30 days. That's how this space is. That's fast how the space is moving. Clearly, if you see, AI isn't the air. It's gone viral. It's spread really fast. In fact, what I've told is that it went to about 100 million users in less than 30 days with people across 160 countries. If I remember in my working career, there were only 2 times we had this kind of a hysteria moment. One was when Netscape was launched, we got a chance to get into the internet, and the other was in 2007 when iPhone came into the picture. Clearly, 16 years later, we are living the iPhone moment again. Right? So let's talk about it. What is so unique about it? What happened? Google Alexa has been there, Google Assistant has been there, all these kind of chatbots have been there. My view is that the reason it's a simplicity, the way they have masked all the complexities behind of the large learning models and ability for humans to engage in a conversation, in a dialogue with a complex machine and to answers. And second thing is, it's what I'm told is that it's able to have that human kind of a dialogue, and It may not have cleared the Turing test. I don't know how many of you know the Turing test or not. It's about the ability to differentiate an output of a machine versus a human being. But it's very, very close to clearing the Turing test. So far, no computer has cleared the Turing test. And it's intelligent as well. ChatGPT 4, it has scored 1461 in the SAP score. It has cleared one of the toughest exams of the bar exams. It's in the 99 percentile for the GRE. Amazing, amazing. But for me personally, what I feel is the test of acceptance within the society is when it gets a legal acceptance. Legal acceptance. Zara the Dog was the first AI book that was actually granted copyright. That's happened last year. It was generated by AI. Actually, the decision was challenged in the court, but the court turned it down, saying that it was the ingenuity and the creativity of the author that used the prompts to generate the book. Hence, they granted the copyright. It was finally auctioned for $30,000. I want to share my personal experience of how I created a 10x increase in productivity. I had to do a research about a company. I primed the model with last 10 years of companies' 10K reports, balance sheets, cash flows, and I was able to get some great answers about how to increase the asset utilization and what if analysis and so forth. Amazing stuff. Effectively, if you look at it, I was able to get a lot of drudgery work that would have actually taken me about close to 50, 60 hours in less than 3 hours. For many ways, AI for me was an augmented intelligence in this particular case. And this is just not limited to just text. If you see the landscape behind me, it goes from text to video to audio. In fact, the video that you just saw there, it puts together audio, it puts together video, feeds into the picture, and it puts it all together. That's the power of the generative AI. Yes, the code being generated and so forth. But my favorite is this application. How many have used Tail.app? Have you? How many else have used it? Excellent. For those who don't know, this is the application that creates very powerful PowerPoints with a prompt. You give a prompt and it will generate a beautiful story slide using ChatGPT and Danny and put together a PowerPoint for you. Still in beta stages, 5 million active users, $84 million spent on building the platform. But guess what? They got disrupted before they could disrupt the market. These features are coming in M365 and Google Workspace. It's going that fast. Can you imagine that? Okay. So let's talk about a little bit of the future. And these are not my words. I think Bill Gates said it. That we are going to see the different marketplaces come together. Google, productivity, Amazon, nobody's going to go there. You probably have ChatGPT. You want to go to Greece with a family, you just create your itinerary, and you have an e-commerce engine. You can book the hotel seamlessly all in one platform. You don't have to hop from one place to another. The only place where I disagree with him, he said it's going to come in 10 years, but the fact it's happening now. ChatGPT now has the ability to do e-commerce transactions and so on. I could go on and talk about, responsible AI, ethical AI, all those kind of things, whether it's going to take the job away or not, but I'm sure we will hear from our panelists. Finally, what I would like to sum up with, this is what Jack Ma once said, that, any human being or any machine that gets you to be creative, innovative, and constructive, do not fight, embrace it. Eventually, it is the humans with AI that's going to take the jobs and just not the machines. So thank you very much. Now we'll hand over to Madhu to take it over from here. Madhu, over to you.
So we're going to get started with the panel discussion now. And Madhu, I'm going to just let you introduce the panelists. Madhu is our past president, TICIAGO. She is also the founder of Foundry Law Group. And so she's in the legal profession, perfect, I think, for moderating today's panel discussion. So thank you, Madhu. And I'm going to hand it over to you to get started with the panel.
Yeah, we need everything. Come on up. Come see. I'm glad you said that I was was perfect to moderate because I engaged a lot of naysayers say, like, what is an attorney doing up here moderating such a technical panel? Well, one, you should be impressed. Two, you already heard a little bit about why kind of legal is kind of going to be end up being part of a lot of this and the kind of the future of how this impacts our world. So thank you, Kishore. Thank you, Bharat and Amit. Thank you for Tech Mahindra for hosting us here. It's very exciting to be the past president, but I didn't have to do all of that. Thank you, Kishore. I was the president the last 3.5 years, so I did my dues too. But in particular, because I am an entrepreneur, and I know many of you are here in this room, and TIE is the community for that. It is a nonprofit organization. It is dedicated to work like this. Yes, we are all gathered here. Yes, we're talking about a topic. Yes, we're talking about a topic that can be commercialized, and we're going to meet some of the entrepreneurs in this space as well. But at the core of it is our desire to inspire and equip entrepreneurs for success in this region. So please use this opportunity to join TIE and be part of our further discussion as we continue to grow and evolve in this community. So I'm really excited to introduce all of you. We took the liberty of asking ChatGPT to put together your bios. So you can tell us if it's right or wrong at the onset. So first I'd like to introduce you to Ankur Desai. He's the CEO of QSEN Inc. He's also the professor of computer science and systems at University of Washington and a pioneering expert in AI-driven healthcare. With a rich background in academia and industry, Ankur has dedicated his career to making healthcare more accessible, affordable, and effective through AI and machine learning. Yes or no? Yeah. Next, meet Vikram Chalana. He's the CEO of Pictory. He's one of the startup CEOs in our CEO group, so if that was something of interest to you, please hit him up and learn more about it. He's an entrepreneur driven by the democratization of expertise. His passion lies in developing technologies that empower non-experts with AI and machine learning capabilities, opening new doors to innovation and accessibility. Yeah? That's good. Next, I'd like, you guys went right in order of my notes, you didn't even know. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Matt Sinclair. He's the Global Director of AI Sales and Strategy at Microsoft, and he brings extensive experience in technical and commercial leadership roles. At Microsoft, Matt leads the team responsible for Azure's AI's commercial go-to-market strategy, shaping the future of AI across cloud, data, and IoT. That's it? Yeah? And last but not least, we're really thrilled to have Sabrina Wu here. She's a venture capitalist with Madrona, one of the local VCs here in the Northwest region, since 2021. She focuses on intelligent applications, data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, strategic, and the future of work. Sabrina's keen eye for investment opportunities and strategic growth supports the success of innovative startups and portfolio companies. Yeah, good. You guys did get to meet our digital panelists today, our avatar, Amit Kessa. Our digital avatar is going to join in for a bit of the fun today in our moderation on a few questions, but not just quite yet. So let's get started. So, we've thrown around a lot of really big fun words, ChatGPT, generative AI, but what does it all really mean? So let's start with level setting. And first understanding what is fundamentally different about generative AI versus traditional AI and how it has affected your business or career, and really why should we all be paying attention? So use this opportunity to expand a little bit about your background and share with us some of your thoughts on these questions.
I can go first too. I'm not the professor here, but I've been involved in AI for a long time, before it was rules and expert systems and that long ago. But there was a parallel track with statistical pattern recognition and stuff I've been working on. My first exposure to this was a paper. So I'm from IIT Kanpur, and as an undergraduate, I was exposed to this paper on neural networks in the late 80s. And I was just fascinated. I've been in this space since then, and worked on, we used to do extract features from images or signals or languages, and then we feed these features into statistical models, classifiers, clustering algorithms, and then you get something from it. And then you train it well enough, and you get something magical happening. But that was the old days. Then we saw like deep learning models where you just you didn't need features at all. You just it would magically figure out the feature, the convolution neural networks, and you just feed the input enough training data and you get the output without worrying about feature extraction. 40 years of work in feature extraction found nobody needed it anymore. And now we're like at this next frontier of where you just the amount of training data is the entire internet, and we just we're still trying to figure out what it all means. So I've kind of been on the intersection of all of this. I worked at a company called MathSoft after I finished my grad school at University of Washington. And MathSoft used to make a predecessor of R called S+. So some of you may have heard of S+. Then I worked at a medical device company. Then I started a company called Wind Shuttle. Grew that to about 350 employees. So I've been a serial entrepreneur since then. And Wind Shuttle was all about SAP and data, structured data, and analysis and making meaning out of structured data. And then now in Pictory, we started with it's all about videos and creating the process of editing or creating videos very easy. Started with NLP, and just 3 years ago, there was no GPT. We were using BERT and Elmo, not Sesame Street characters, but language models, and now it's all large language stuff. But quick background about me.
Thank you. For me, I think the main difference between traditional AI and generative AI can be quickly summarized in the capability of AI shifting from requiring a lot of human input in terms of label data. So all of you are used to Google Maps, or you've seen handwriting recognition, which is where I started my journey in machine learning 27 years ago. And we've come a long way where we needed a lot of labeled data in order to then train the traditional machine learning model. And there are certain limitations when it comes to single shot machine learning models like that. Particularly, it's very difficult to take a AI model trained on data from one setting. And I work in healthcare, so take data from one hospital system, let's say, and you train a model on patients from that hospital system, and then you take that model and try to deploy it in another hospital system. You have to completely go through the retraining cycle again to localize the model for that health system. And this is not just anecdotal. In fact, many of you here know about my previous company, Gensai, which we founded spin out of the University of Washington. And we built an entire platform and a business for 7 years, deploying machine learning models in healthcare, going from one health system to the next, taking a template of a model built in one place, and then trying to deploy and scale it up in many others. Fast forward to today, and for the last 2 years, I've been working on my next startup, QZen, which is again in the healthcare space, but it's more in the space of health than in the space of healthcare. And what we are doing is fundamentally very, very different and unique. We have at QZen some of the largest footprint on human behavior data, particularly lifestyle data and clinical data. And we are using all of that to generate you can think of it as a GPT large language model, but instead of language, our model is a large clinical behavioral graph, which then does not require, because it is such a vast knowledge graph of human behavior, that we do not require this model to go to different installations and then retrain these models. So now we have the capability of understanding pathways that humans follow in lifestyles, and then using those pathways without the need of retraining these models again and again and again. You can deploy these models or use them. So that's the first difference between traditional AI and generative AI. The second startling difference that we should all be very careful about and know about is that once you train a generative AI model using such large amounts of data, say the whole internet, something fascinating starts to happen. So let's say that you train ChatGPT to predict the next word in a sentence. Mary had a little, and all of us can finish that sentence very, very, cleanly. But ChatGPT was originally trained in order to do sentence completion. But the inventors at OpenAI started realizing that because of the amount of parameters that this model contains, it suddenly became very amenable or useful to solve multiple other problems as well. So a model trained on task A is successfully, with a very few labeled examples of task B, is now able to solve problems like task B, task C, task D, and so on. So this capability of having model trained for one particular task also helping solve problems that are similar in nature, but for different tasks, is the fundamental shift that we are experiencing as the difference between traditional AI and generative AI. And that's how we are using it in both my academic research as well as in my entrepreneurial pursuits.
Very good responses. Hi folks, Matt Sinclair. I used to build like chips and silicon, all sorts of stuff, and I work for Microsoft in the commercial space. All great stuff about generative AI. A slightly different angle I'm going to talk about is why it's such a big moment right now. And for two reasons. One, the ability for consumers and the broad market to access AI. That's one of the biggest reasons why we saw the uptake in consumer application. You no longer need a notebook to go in and write in Python or anything like that. Any of you can open your phone and get access to this amazing, incredible technology. It's one of the big reasons why it's having such a moment. The second is how we interface with it, right? We just use natural language. So the head of Tesla AI, or the former head of Tesla AI, said the most popular coding language at the moment is the English language. And that is some of the key differentiation, because we've probably been on panels for the last 5 to 10 years talking about AI innovations, how exciting it is, deep learning, blah, blah, blah. And yes, this is a good moment for new and innovative AI, but how we can access it, how anyone can access it, either through a consumer application or if you're a regular developer, etc. This is what's making it so powerful and interesting for organizations around the globe. And so I'm sure we'll go into that a bit shortly, but just to take a slightly different angle on why this is such a big moment right now.
Yeah, so hey guys, Sabrina Wu, as Purdue said, investor at Moderna. Moderna's been around for close to 30 years now. We invest in early stage technology companies, and we've been investing in this landscape of AI for at least the last decade. I'd say one thing that has changed with large language models and generative AI more broadly is the ability for early stage companies to actually get up to speed faster. As the panelists were alluding to, the training data, the cost to get the model up and running was a large barrier to entry, versus today a lot of early stage startups can leverage these large language models and start building on top of them at a faster speed than ever before. So I'd say that's one thing that has really shifted just even in the last year. So I'm sure we'll dig into more of these things later, but just want to call out.
Thank you, Sarita. Lots of wonderful angles, and that's what we really love about this panel is we're bringing to you different perspectives on kind of how generative AI is becoming important to us and how it's affecting our community. If we were to dive a little deeper into kind of the various areas that you represent, Sabrina, while you still have the microphone, you had mentioned that entrepreneurs are able to leverage these models faster than they ever were before. Is that impacting your decision-making process as you're investing in these? Is it creating a shadow, or is it creating an opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's a good question because as you think about companies that are able to leverage large language models, the question is how do you build a defensible business? How do you create a moat around it? If anyone can use a GPT-3, as an example of one of the large language models and put a wrapper around it and offer that as a solution, is that a defensible business? Can you actually grow? So I think the pace of innovation makes us step back and say, hey, we got to actually make sure we understand what we're investing in. Are you building a company with a strong UI UX at the forefront? Are you also thinking about some of the other things that solving an actual hair on fire problem? Maybe how are you doing reinforcement learning to have better outputs? So some things to really kind of consider when making investment decisions, and then also just thinking about the customer base, who you're trying to target. Is this user actually understand how to get the best output out of the model? And that goes back to kind of the user experience, I would say. But the pace of innovation has been really fast. I think every day, we see a new model get released, or we see something that's, a new company or Microsoft comes up with an announcement and potentially squashes a lot of the early stage startups in the ecosystem. So a lot of questions to kind of think through as an investor in the space, but it's a really exciting time.
Great, that's a good segue back to Matt to share a little bit about this concept of generative AI as a co-pilot. We all know that Microsoft is a huge player and is the lead in investing in the space and kind of pushing forward the different, making it more accessible than maybe otherwise would have been to the market. Any thoughts on what Sabrina shared and maybe where you see Microsoft going with this?
Yeah, so I think we're right at the start of this journey. Yes, there are lots of use cases that everyone's seeing and jumping on, but as the market develops, as the industry develops, we're going to see areas where startups and entrepreneurs definitely have a role to play, as well as big enterprises. So for us, of course, we're reviewing this technology across our entire stack for the reasons that kind of been mentioned a little bit on the panel already. But for us, it's about the productivity benefits. So being able to summarize the entire document and get that succinct, being able to ask additional questions, like the productivity gains that gives businesses is extraordinary. You may have even seen some of the Codex announcements with GitHub Copilot, the ability to write code, right? That's getting better and better and better. So how do we leverage this amazing technology to get rid of the mundane and boring elements of our job so we can be more productive with the far more creative and complex? And then the question comes, at what point does that converge? And I say, let's focus on the tech that's happening right now and the moment we're in, because this is where the real benefits are.
For those here, coming to us from different enterprises, you had mentioned leveraging ChatGPT more for the incremental value of productivity gains. Any other areas you feel like can leverage it as they all kind of support one another?
So the biggest use case we're seeing for, ChatGPT and the generative AI models is using it with the data set that the organization has. And so every organization is looking at ChatGPT. I can build a chatbot with that. But where the unique value comes in that maybe differentiates some of the large organizations from, say, startups is putting it on their data set and then exposing that to their consumers or their internal employees. This combination of the personalized data set with the ChatGPT models is really where organizations are going to find their differentiation. If you try and build a PowerPoint extension with ChatGPT, well, there's a good chance that it might be on Microsoft's roadmap as an example. But if you've got data sets that only your organization has, or you have as experience, similar to what Sabrina was saying, that only you can offer, that's where when you combine the models, you create that differentiated experience.
Do you see opportunities for competitive advantages for these organizations as they differentiate with their data sets?
Yeah, I see if you don't apply this technology, you're getting it left behind. So it's less of a competitive advantage and more of you need to implement it to keep up.
Yeah, great, thank you. Speaking of keeping up, let's move back to Vikram. One of the things that's really compelling when we were speaking earlier, getting to know Vikram throughout his journey with Victory, is the tremendous growth in just a few short months as ChatGPT has come out. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we thought we were growing fast last year. We grew about 15% month over month throughout last year. And then ChatGPT came out, and in the last 3 months, we've grown sixfold. So it's been a fun journey, and I'll kind of elaborate why. So one of our use cases is similar to what we were showing before here. You could take a piece of text, input it, and Victory will produce a video from it. It doesn't do this avatar videos. It basically uses stock content and searches the best stock content and adds text to speech and puts it all together, adds music, puts it all together in a video. That use case just blew up after ChatGPT because people started using ChatGPT to create the scripts, put the script in Pictory, create the video, put the video on YouTube, and building their channels that way. And so we've added thousands and thousands of new users in the last 6 months. But now we're actually using it in a way that Matt just suggested, which is basically we've collected so much data from our users and what they're doing with it, and now we're improving models and we're creating our own custom fine-tuned models on top of GPT.
Thank you. So, using it to create scripts leads the question back to asking Ankur to put his academia hat on. In the world of academia, like how do you embrace ChatGPT, or is it something that's threatening the culture of original ideas, original writing, original script drafting, in specifically the world from academia, not necessarily your hat as the CEO of a generative AI company?
Yeah, definitely. So from an academic perspective, this has shaken academia to its core. I can not tell you the number of conversations that me and my colleagues are having on the appropriate use of tools like ChatGPT inside the classrooms and the impact that it's going to have on the entire education system is tremendous. But as educators, we see our role as those that evolve with times in order to then provide a better skilled workforce to the community, at the same time produce scholars that are able to contribute back to the society and advance the knowledge of humanity. So keeping in UW's mission of producing that workforce at the same time educating for the future, we have to be very mindful about embracing these technologies and ensuring that our students and our teachers are quite well aware of the potential pitfalls of that technology, such as hallucinations and making of facts, right? And many times students may not be discerning enough to know the literature or know the science behind that particular output that a tool like ChatGPT might be generating. So we are taking all steps to then educate the students. I would actually like to raise the conversation a little bit more for the audience, where today you are seeing massive amount of interaction happening with the language model. But imagine in education, in medical school, using a multimodal generative model that can synthesize X-ray images and CT scans and doctor's notes and human patient interaction, and eventually an agent or a generative AI model, which is multimodal, outputting diagnoses, and then making medical school students learn from such a generative teacher and the impact of that on healthcare and potential pitfalls of what that could lead to. So, from an academic perspective, we not only worry about the English language ChatGPT, we also worry about the multimodality and where the world is going in terms of foundation models.
Thank you. That leads me to my next question. A lot of the examples you've given so far from all of you, including potential use cases, almost seems like magic in some of the cases. And it's all coming very, very fast. And it feels, and recently many of us saw that a group of tech leaders put an open letter asking for a pause on the development of AI systems and an actual expansion of government oversight for this. Knowing, kind of giving the example, even Ankur, maybe you could start with this, and what you just described of what that might look like. What are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like we're going too fast? Is it too powerful, too fast? Do you think we should be worried about the threat to society? Is the moratorium the answer?
Controversial moratorium, or at least the movement to start a moratorium. I think there are a lot of vested interests that are at play from multiple angles that we are to be very mindful about when we discuss that as a topic, right? From my perspective, and this is completely a personal opinion, I think that just like we blame calculators for not educating children in doing fundamental mathematical tables, today we are at a stage where we are blaming a technology that we don't completely understand. And just because it is popular, we are seeing that that affects the mental model of human society. What we have to remember is that the human brain is an extremely evolving, resolute, and adaptable organ in the human body. The way that the human brain can spot what is not perfect or instinctively go after something that is not shaped to be perfect is amazing. And so, trying to put a curve on a technology that is set to fundamentally change the way society functions is certainly not going to help the cause of social well-being in any way. And I'll give you an example from my own startup. We are trying to, today, most of you, in this room, might be using multiple apps and wellness protocols or digital therapeutics to take care of yourself or your aging parents or other members of the society. So a typical polychronic patient with diabetes, hypertension, etc., tends to use about 5 to 10 apps at the same time. And I'm just being very conservative about the number of apps that are installed on people's phones. And on a typical day, one ends up getting 60 to 90 notifications from these apps in order to get advice on what to do next to keep someone's health in good shape. The technology that we are working on enables our enterprise customers to optimize those pathways for patients, because each individual person's health journey in this room is different from the person sitting next to you. So why should a stock message from Apple to close your rings or from Fitbit to walk more be sufficient enough for your health journey and your model of health? So with Uzen, we are actually accelerating significantly the way that health enterprises can set up protocols and then engage the member while continuing to use these apps, but personalizing the messages that go out and making them actionable in a way that it improves your outcomes. And how do you use generative AI in that service is a completely different discussion that we can have. But I say full speed ahead. We need this. We've been promised this with investments that we have made in technology, in compute infrastructure. The taxpayer dollars that all of us have paid the US government for the last 20 plus years are finally getting put to good use in accelerating some of these. And we can expect more and more and more technology to develop. Having said that, I would like to close by saying that absolutely better legal and ethical framework is needed in order to ensure that tools and technologies produced by this AI are appropriately regulated. And we cannot do away with that regulation because it is set up for the benefit of human society. And as long as we can make sure that investments that we make are quadrupled at the pace at which the AI models are being built, it's going to be an arms race where fairness and bias and the inherent problems with underlying data on which these models are trained to some extent need to be mitigated very quickly. And new legislation will have to be passed to some extent, or new policy will at least have to be adopted in order to accelerate the deployment of these technologies, but at the same time, backward regulate as these technologies come forward. So the verdict is still out.
Thank you. Victor, your thoughts?
I'm not sure if moratorium is the solution, but I see a problem that my customers contribute to as well, is spam. And a lot of spam, a lot of misinformation that can be potentially created from this. And hopefully there'll be a solution for it with OpenAI's investments, other Microsoft investments in this. But that I see as the biggest problem. Misinformation leading to political disturbances, leading to all kinds of things. And lots of junk and spam and which the future models will be trained on.
Yeah, so not much left to say, I guess, plus one to all that. I think the most important thing from our side is that the conversation's had around this. So although I personally don't agree with the moratorium, but I do advocate for the conversation on it. At Microsoft, we have a bunch of like responsible AI principles and guidelines that we try and communicate out. And so I actually think it's wonderful that we're having this conversation around how to appropriately use this technology instead of letting it run wild on the internet, etc. And so we also have a history of advocating strong policy on AI as well. I think there's a good balance where governments and regulatory bodies can come in to make sure the technology is directed in the appropriate manner while still allowing for innovation and creativity. I think there was a point mentioned before around the arms race around AI as well. I don't use the frame arms race, but it's a popular discussion around different countries, different organizations generating this AI capability. If the United States chooses to stop developing it, well, someone else out there is just going to develop it quicker. And the advantage will be lost, the learnings will be lost, and all of a sudden we'll be behind. And so that's why I'm not in favor of the moratorium, I'm very much in favor of the conversation.
Yeah, not much to add. I completely agree with everything the panelists have said. I think that from an early stage startup perspective, there's definitely guardrails that you can put into place. You can use bad filter words. You can do different things to make sure that the model may not spit out potentially very harmful things. But I think that there should continue to be a discussion around how to have more AI governance and AI ethics and responsible AI embedded into applications over time.
So I just wanted to add to something Sabrina you said just now, that trick, just struck a chord in my head. I think we are looking at this. We're looking at this moratorium and the conversation around moratorium from a very wrong perspective. Okay. Look, the fundamental issue here is that traditional AI and the way that we were using traditional machine learning models were much worse compared to what we are seeing in terms of acceleration and what this technology can produce. So we have to put that in the context. I remember an instance, and some of my colleagues from my previous startup are here in the audience. I remember an instance where we deployed a machine learning model in Chicago, in downtown, in order to predict which patients walking into the emergency room will go left without being seen. As in, people who need care inside the emergency room are often the people who often cannot afford to sit in the emergency room. Think about that. They are the ones who are daily wage workers. They are the ones who have a single child at home. They are the ones who have had an accident at work but cannot complain to their employer. We built a predictive model on the data that it was trained on from that system. We proved that it was, I don't remember exactly, but 79-80% accurate. We tested it for 3 months. We deployed the model. 10 days after deploying the model would predict every African American coming into the ED to be high risk of leaving without being seen. And this just happened. Of course, we put an immediate stop to the model because the model was clearly not doing its job. And then going back, we realized that the data and the protocol and the technique that we had used had not been sufficiently tested before we put that model into deployment. And so now my question to the audience is, this is how the last 10, 15 years or 20 years of AI deployments have worked, and nobody has complained. So why now? In fact, we have enough evidence from the field to learn from those mistakes that we have made in order to make this technology even better. So let's invest in making sure that all the good work that has gone into traditional AI is now applied to generative AI and make it better. So just wanted to call that out while you said, that last comment.
Thank you. That's really impactful to hear that we're talking about the evolution from traditional AI and the learnings can apply now. So while this feels new and novel and magical, it comes from somewhere. It's not based on, it's not brand new. And so there's an opportunity for whoever takes the lead in the space to provide some regulatory guidance. We're all looking to Microsoft to lead the way, but it's not just their responsibility. It's many organizations' responsibility. We know that congressional authorities go slow. People, as a lawyer, ask me all the time, what is the law in this? Like, what should you do? The law is even slower, and there will be a lot to be seen of where it happens, and it's just gonna apply what we have so far to this new space. And it's gonna be interesting to see where it all lands up. However, this conversation is really powerful to see that there's different points of view, and not everything we read out there, which may be generated, which may be real, which may be not, is going to come with a grain of salt now to kind of decipher what's there. But before we go to the next question, let's see what ChatGPT thinks about this question. Is generative AI becoming too powerful too fast?
And can be developed very quickly. However, it is important to note that generative AI does not pose a threat to society. As with any technology, there are potential risks and benefits that must be considered. The potential risks include misuse of the technology, data privacy, and algorithmic bias. However, there are also potential benefits that generative AI can bring, such as increased efficiency, cost savings, and improved decision-making. Ultimately, it is up to the developers and users of generative AI to ensure that it is used responsibly and ethically.
So I guess we didn't need ChatGPT. We got it in real life from this panelist, sharing the same thoughts, which is good. I guess it confirms that the bot feels the same way. I do appreciate the thoughts on the U.S. running behind and it being an arms race, and we're seeing other countries come up with solutions and parameters sooner than the United States. And so, with an election coming up next year, I think these concerns that Vikram suggested are going to be at the forefront of a lot of what's happening, and will be maybe the light that this is take on to see some legal solutions coming out to help with some framework around this. But another question that's on everyone's mind when it comes to generative AI is a lot of this discussion around productivity and efficiency. And in light of all the recent layoffs, the fear of automation is becoming truer each day as we see examples and use cases of generative AI. What are your predictions for this job market, and where should we be investing in education?
I guess I'll start with that. So there's a reason why a lot of the Microsoft products are called Copilot. It's because this AI, this generative AI capability only works with human input, with human discerning on the output, etc. And so very much right now, we're not seeing it replace jobs. In fact, it's creating jobs, right? And that's not just a marketing slogan. Look at things like prompt engineering, right? Entirely new category of, I guess, developers that are now being hired in market to create, these AI applications, etc. So we're very much seeing the creation of jobs. We're very much seeing the moving away of those mundane, boring jobs and into far more complex parts of the business. And I think that trend is going to continue as well. I mean, we've been talking about AI replacing jobs for a decade. And the chief legal officer of Microsoft likes to talk about the blog called the day the horse retired, or something like that. It's when fire trucks used to be pulled by horses, by people, sorry. And then they went, look at this magic thing, it's a horse. It's now going to pull fire trucks. And they said, there goes 6 people's jobs. We're never going to recover the economy. What are we going to do? Well, actually, they moved on to more productive things. The horse was able to get to the fire quicker, etc., etc. Read the blog if you want. But I think that's what we're going to continue seeing over the next coming years, decades, etc. Is very much this productivity and collaborative aspect of it. Thoughts?
I just agree with all of that. It's every phase somebody compared this to the internet and the launch of the iPhone. All of that added huge productivity gains to our economy. And I think this is yet another technology that would add to that. And I think education.
I think there was a report out a few days ago which said that ChatGPT or generative AI technologies will put 300 million people out of a job. I don't know how many of you saw that, but there's a number now that some economists have estimated. And that number seems to be a number, again, I need to read the report completely and fully, but it seems to be a number for an annual basis. So they're saying that annually, if this goes on over the next 20 years or so, 2 decades, 300 million people will be out of a productive job that they are doing today. Now, just to put that number 300 million in context, if you look at the entire US workforce, right, we're talking about all of us, there are 300 million jobs in the US right now, right? So basically, globally, if the technology is going to replace or put out of work 300 million people, that means it's equivalent to the entire US working population today, right? The question is the entire workforce reduction or efficiency gain attributable to just generative AI, or is it attributable to the new technology ventures and the retooling that this will enable in the global economy? And if you look at that, at least the way I see it, is it is going to be fundamental retooling, just like computers and typewriters replaced note taking in the 60s and the 70s, and then telex and automated switching networks replaced telephone operators, right? Yes, some industries are going to get fundamentally disrupted, particularly those that are in the business of creative content generation, have the highest amount of susceptibility in terms of losing that job. Right? Having said that, those content generators are actually some of the smartest people on earth. They are employed at some of the smartest advertising agencies, and some of the best marketing conglomerates, and the retooling of that smart workforce and the generations that are going to follow is actually going to fundamentally shift the way that we produce output in terms of new artifacts, new creative knowledge, and new social fabrics. So that's what I'm excited about. And I continue to be excited about the fact that it is going to help us pay more attention. So instead of, just like washing machines allowed women in rural Africa to focus more on education and ensure that the time that they save by not having to wash clothes by hand actually contributed to the upliftment of the society, where they could focus more on education and healthcare. The same thing will happen. Again, remember, the human brain is extremely resilient and adaptable as an organ, and we get there.
Thank you. Sabrina, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think they covered it very nicely.
Well, he left us on a hopeful note, so I'll take that. This is one more question for our avatar panelist. Let's see what they predict, which jobs are likely to be replaced by generative AI in the next decade.
Answer. In the next decade, it is likely that certain jobs will involve repetitive tasks, such as data entry, customer service, and certain types of manual labor, will be replaced by generative AI. Additionally, AI may also replace jobs in fields such as finance, accounting, law, and medicine, as AI is increasingly used to automate tasks and processes. AI is also likely to replace jobs in creative fields such as writing, art, and music, as AI tools become more sophisticated and capable of creating original content.
Any thoughts on that? Anybody agree with disagree?
I think one of the key differences we talk about is displacement versus replacement as well. So I think we talk about is AI going to replace jobs, and it's the conversation we have is well, it will undoubtedly displace people, and so reskilling is actually a huge part of the conversation as well. So I wanted to add to that point because I think it's up to everyone who generates AI capabilities, including organizations like Microsoft, to make sure we're helping reskill those who may be displaced from these technologies, and not just AI, but any technologies. So just a simple question.
I appreciate the aspect about reskilling and education as basically, the takeaway is not being too comfortable. It's important to learn new things, and adaptability is a big key to a lot of the success of everyone in this room, and also how ChatGPT continues to improve and incrementally make us more productive. Anything you were going to add?
No, I think that in the immediate term, there's still going to be a human in the loop. This idea of co-pilot that Microsoft has kind of talked a lot about. So I don't necessarily think that all jobs will be replaced, but I do think it'll make people more productive generally and be able to focus on the tasks that may involve more human thinking that currently maybe these large language models can't do.
I wouldn't mind some of my colleague lawyers being replaced, but I'll take it. Well, it is, being built off of what's out there and what's publicly out there. There's a lot of confidential information. This is kind of a side question that all of the companies that everybody's focused in on their proprietary technology, proprietary thoughts and trade secrets and things like that. And to what extent do you see that getting impacted by this, and to what extent do you contribute to the content that's being, or contribute to the content that's being used to generate these options with ChatGPT, or does it stay confidential? We've already heard a few instances of, at Amazon and Google, like information getting out through these resources. Any thoughts, especially from you, Matt, with regards to Amazon?
Look, this is probably the number one conversation I have with customers daily. I was on a call today with the CEO of a large financial institution, and literally the entire hour was not about AI and chat, it was about data privacy and security. And we were talking about things like data leaks that didn't even require AI. How many people uploaded inadvertently credentials to GitHub and accidentally, unlocked the entire database. So I think it's wonderful that this topic of data privacy and security is now becoming front of mind as we're having the AI conversation, because it should be all the time with all the technology. Now, specifically on the data sets that are being used to train, as was mentioned before, for a lot of the AI models, they're public data sets, right? Although we have the challenge where the economics of generating content is effectively zeroed out, and that has implications. One of the things that I was chatting to a customer the other day about is, he asked me, are people just going to stop putting things on the internet because they're worried that models are going to be trained on it? And I didn't have an answer. It's a really good question. But where we ended up is, well, people are still going to have web pages. People still want to get content out there. In fact, what they're probably going to be doing is being more curated about how they release their content, the manner that they release it, because they know that potentially not only humans, but also models will now be trained on this data set. And so they're going to want to appear in a certain way for these models. And so, again, I don't have an answer for that, but I thought it was a wonderful conversation to have. And then the final thing is, for a lot of the use cases that we talked about earlier around using personalized data sources, you don't actually need to retrain the model for a lot of these impactful use cases that customers are looking at. You simply feed the information, sample of the information to the model, and it creates a response based on that sample. It doesn't actually retain any of the information that you're giving it. And this is actually where most organizations are having the advantage. Sorry, a couple of eyebrows go up. So it's like prompt engineering. You give it summarize this text. You give it the text, it goes and summarizes the response, but the model itself doesn't actually retain the information when it's giving that response. It just kind of forgets because it's trained on data sets from September 2021. So this is a big part of the education we're doing with customers at the moment, both how the model works, but then also those data security and privacy principles that we should have been talking about anyway. So, yeah.
It is on people's mind. Like many of you probably have just looked at a basic NDA, for example, and there's almost a carve out, like already in the public domain. And now I'm getting the question, does that include what's already out there in the AI? Does that count as like, am I going to be impacted by that disclosure if I ask a question that's related to this? And so it's bringing up a lot of really interesting questions, at least in my space as an attorney in this space, but also just generally as people are thinking of based on the examples you're getting, of where those lines will be and what that does that actually mean. But also with all that comes opportunities and challenges for the entrepreneurs, especially those in this room, trying to find a way to adapt and pivot and respond to generative AI. So what are your thoughts on, what are some like speculations you have, or where do you see some of the opportunities and challenges go from here for entrepreneurs in this room who are trying to do everything at once, wear all the hats, bring ChatGPT to their right, but do the respectable thing, and then follow the right protocols, but then also expand and find new layers, but not just put a bow on it. You know, like what does it all look like?
I think it's a good question. I think it's a really exciting time to be an entrepreneur in this space. I think if you look at venture capital dollars being invested in the space, it's gone up dramatically. Every VC investor that I know is very excited about the promises of generative AI, but I think with that and everything that Microsoft and others are doing in this space, you've got to think about how to build a defensible moat. And I think one of the spaces where early stage startups have an advantage is they can leverage multiple large language models, right? OpenAI and Microsoft, they're not going to leverage what DeepMind is doing or what Hugging Face may be doing with the open source model, right? So how do I stitch together the best models? How do I make sure that I'm leveraging the newest and greatest technologies into my early stage startup? That's an advantage that you may have over a company that is, you know, generative enhanced in a way, so maybe they don't have large language models at the core of how they built the company. So thinking about some of these advantages that you can have as an early stage startup will be really critical in terms of thinking about how to build a defensible company. I also think that there's a lot of opportunity in more vertical use cases that can be more niche that maybe other, you know, big tech companies aren't thinking about. So healthcare and biotech is a really great example of a more niche vertical. Legal, for example, is another one where people are starting to think through how you can use models to create you know, a better output. And before maybe it was just an assistant to your workflow, but now it can actually kind of replace that workflow. So just thinking about things that maybe the big tech companies aren't thinking about. There's tons of opportunity there. I could go on and on about different opportunities for early stage startups. It's exciting.
As a follow-up before you share with another panelist, there's some reports that say there's still a decline in funding, even though some of these startups who are benefiting from ChatGPT or other generative AI tools are experiencing extraordinary growth. Any thoughts on explaining that? A bit of what feels like a conundrum. Like they're doing extremely well, but they're not able to get the funding. Is it this issue of defensible mode, or is it something else?
Yeah, so I think if you look at 2022 over 2021, there's definitely a drop because 2021 was just such a frothy time in the market. Valuations, companies were getting raised and done at, you know, exuberant values. Relative to now, the market has kind of corrected a little bit in a way. I would say that, you know, building a defensible company, given how much things have changed even in the last 2 weeks, call it, is tough for investors because we're still trying to think through how do you build a defensible company. When is Microsoft going to come in and maybe offer some of these features into their Office suites? Or, you know, how is Google going to think about, you know, ways to do better search or embed some of these different features? So I think it's a mixed question. I think if you look at the raw data, it makes it seem like there has been a decrease, which on a dollar basis there has been, but I would say overall there's still a lot of VC funds that are sitting on a lot of dry powder, a lot of, you know, dollars that need to be deployed, and this is a space that people are very, very excited about.
Thank you. If you hand it over to Vikram, I appreciate your thoughts on how you feel. I don't know that you're necessarily in fundraising mode, or maybe you have been recently. How are you feeling these questions?
Yes, I was in that board recently. We were trying to raise a round, and I was consistently, I mean, we had grown 6x in 3 months, but I was getting that defensibility question all the time. And partly it's also because the things are changing so fast and we were not in a verticalized mode. It also got hard. It's basically everybody saying, wait 6 months out and something will be completely different. We'll know who the winners are, we'll know how things settle out. That was the response I was getting. So at the same time, the opportunities that we see in front of us that I think any of you who want to be entrepreneurs will see in front of you are incredible. Because some of the things we were able to do happened so quickly. Fine-tuning these large language models for specific tasks it's an amazing solution to so many problems. You don't need a lot of data, you don't need a lot of labeling. Goes back to what Uncle was saying in the beginning. You can take something that has been trained for task A and repurpose it for task B without a lot of effort. And that, while that is not defensible, defensibility may come from your verticalization of that solution for a specific market. Like we found, for example, we have a lot of church sermons that customers were uploading into our platform and editing it with our platform. So we probably have the best sermon summarizer in the market in the world ever. And it's like trained on biblical data, and it's amazing. So that's an example of a verticalization that with not a lot of data and in very quick time we were able to create. And now if we can quickly go to market to those churches, to those millions of churches, it creates a fascinating opportunity. So that's an example. I mean, funding is fine. I think if you're succeeding as a business, you're succeeding. You're not necessarily succeeding because you raised a huge amount of money.
Akbar, anything you would add to that?
Couple of quick points. I'll put the question in two frameworks. The first framework is as an entrepreneur and the CEO of a fast-growing company. I think as Sabrina said, there's a lot of dry powder sitting, and there's a lot of interest in good companies with right fundamentals. Nobody can debate that, even in this market. Now, let me go down to the framework of what those good fundamentals have become in the space of generative AI. I break it down into three categories. If you are a startup, or if you are a company, or if you are looking to launch a company here by attending an event like this at NIAC, encourage you to think about it in three buckets. You are either trying to start a company that is going to fundamentally change the way compute works at the infrastructure level, that then supports generative AI and multimodal generative AI. So think about that. Are you designing a new way of compressing machine learning models? Are you thinking of new ways of offering compute in an API way that then serves a huge amount of industries on top of it? Right? So that's one layer. The second layer to think about is in terms of verticalization of generative models, a space that I think my company is in, for example, QZ. We are solely focused on health and behavior change for health. And then we have a huge data moat because of the data footprint that we have in the marketplace. Now, taking that data and then commercializing it in the service of patient, citizens, members through the work that we do in the B2B space with our enterprise customers is a way of verticalization of that in the middle. And then the third layer to think about is really the exciting layer of direct-to-consumer generative AI models that you do. There is not enough bandwidth or speed inside organizations like Microsoft or Amazon that they can ship fast. That's the advantage you have of generating. And I don't mean to dismiss talking about shipping fast, but traditionally large enterprise organizations like Microsoft or like Amazon or Google are traditionally slow at putting out products and testing products. One of the reasons why I think Microsoft smartly invested and kept OpenAI out of Microsoft is because of that fundamental reason to run fast and get it done. Had it been, no offense to all the Microsoft people here, being inside Microsoft, ChatGPT would probably have taken 10 more years, right? And that's the story. So entrepreneurship is amazing because it allows for development of those opportunities. And then, if at that top layer, your app or your solution is so compelling for the end consumer that they just cannot do without it, and then they are going with that. I think all the strategies of investment make sense, and you just follow the traditional business model, and you either raise tremendous amount of money and make it happen, or you get acquired at a really great valuation. So, all power to entrepreneurs in the room.
Matt, anything you'd like to add? You saw the big smile on your face.
No, I was just chuckling. It feels pretty fast. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a busy 3 months. But I appreciate I respect the point that yes, entrepreneurs, startups can definitely move quickly, but everyone's moving quickly at the moment. So people get better get started.
Thank you. All right, well, we have, this is the end of my questions, so thank you all. We have about 10 minutes or so for some questions from the audience. Does anyone like to kick us off? Well, I have my eyes on 3-4 people, but I'm gonna start over here because he's right here. But you can.
Hey, my question is super new. Hey. So as a cold-nosed, alpha-seeking investor, how do you think about deep moat formation in this space, specifically outside of verticalization? So everybody's like Microsoft, the Googles, everybody is just trying to figure out horizontal use cases for AI and generative AI specifically. How are you thinking about which verticals to enter, or are you sort of just like waiting for entrepreneurs to say, oh, this is a specific vertical that I'm after, and you're just going to sort of follow along as investors do?
It's a good question. So at Moderna, we definitely have what we call prepare minds. So we do a lot of research on different theses areas that we're excited about. And so I would say, in terms of building a defensible moat, it comes down to a couple things. And in my opinion, I think one is really UI UX. I think people don't think about that maybe as much as how do I, make this experience very delightful for my end customer, right? How do I get what I want out of the large language model? It's not easy to ask the model a question and get the specific answer without maybe doing some reinforcement learning, doing some fine tuning around it, right? So how do you create the best output possible and make it in a way that doesn't disrupt the general flow of work? So, I think Gmail, for example, has done a really great job of having auto suggestions for maybe how to finish out a sentence, and it's not intrusive in the natural sense, right? So things like UI, UX is really important. I think when it comes to thinking about different verticals to enter, it's where large language models have new capabilities that maybe traditional AI didn't have. So reasoning, maybe being able to perform tasks in action. So one example is the travel industry, right? So before, it would historically take a very long time to maybe think about booking a trip, all the way to looking at all the different types of reviews and then going to take action, right? The idea, hey, can I get this model to do an action for me and connect to different data sources, right? And so I think when you think about things like that, that's where there's an opportunity for new types of businesses that maybe were not there before, or maybe reimagining certain types of verticals. I think there's some interesting things around multimodal use cases as well. And so perhaps that could be across things that we don't even think about customer success, where it's taking in voice to text, and then also thinking about email or different omni-channel experiences where you're getting in multiple different types of information. So those are some of the examples. I think biotech is a really great one too. You're seeing AlphaFold making a lot of advancements there. So there's a lot of different verticals that I think startups can come and build really great companies in.
Any other audience questions?
Thank you. I'm going to take you back to a totally different universe. You're all professionals. I just came back from a National School Board Association conference. Now, like our professor, we are seeing ChatGPT being used in colleges. But imagine a middle schooler and a high schooler is using it. How does, think about how does that affect teaching, skills learning, and how does the young minds adapt, and how do they actually leverage this amazing tool in the future. Can you mic this up?
I think enough has been debated about the potential harm that technologies like this can do. But the first time that I saw this in action, right, it was very clear to me that, and I'm someone that has worked in machine learning for 25 years, right? So the fact that it is able to synthesize so much amount of knowledge at the speed that it was doing that, and able to produce the outputs that were fascinating, at the same time convincing, was just mind-blowing for me. So me and my wife, we were interacting with ChatGPT, and she asked a very interesting question. She used to be a Microsoft research. She's now the head of new eScience Software Engineering Center, and she asked a question: write a story about a physicist that has just got notified that they have won the Nobel Prize, and they have to fly to Stockholm to receive the prize, but they are stuck at home because they do not know how to tie shoelaces. Right? And this is the story scenario that she gave to ChatGPT, and it produced the most amazing prose on how this physicist Nobel laureate learns about winning the prize, how he calls his wife, how his wife walks him through step by step on what to do to tie your shoelaces, and how he overcomes that challenge and takes the flight to Stockholm on time, right? And when I saw that, right, my first reaction was not like, oh wow, this is going to solve all problems in humanity. My first reaction was, how do I educate my 12-year-old daughter to interact with this system in a way that she has the capability and the skills to discern when it is doing a job better than any human can do, and in what situations does she need to step in and take ownership of the output that this thing is producing. In Redux, I think kids growing up today, as we came back from this national conference on education, it's even more important for us to teach our kids the ability to ask the right questions. That one fundamental human skill is still beyond AI. And if we can do our jobs right and make sure that we retain the ability to ask the right questions, I don't think we have to worry about our kids and our education system.
I have another story, a funny story about this. So it's from the teacher's perspective. So my wife is a teacher, and the thing about her job that she hates is writing student feedback at the end of every quarter. And for the first time, she used ChatGPT, and she really enjoyed the experience. And she says, like, it took the worst part of her job away. So there's another benefit in education.
Hi, thanks. Pleasure to be here. So when ChatGPT first came out, I played with it and started asking questions like, how do you make coffee, or how do you change a car tire? And it gave pretty good answers. But I also know that ChatGPT and technologies like that are more probabilistic. They could give you different answers at different times, and that they can also hallucinate, right? So I work for Boeing, and part of the group that trains mechanics, right? So my question is, how far is the technology away from giving deterministic answers and not hallucinating? So if a mechanic asks a question on, how do I fix a jet engine or something, you don't want different answers at different times. You want it specific to that trained model and not hallucinate. So how far are we from there today?
I suspect not very far, but
Whenever ChatGPT was released, was how soon. So I actually presented to Bob the other day, actually. I had this question. So a couple of things. One is, yes, it's going to be probabilistic, not deterministic, because that's what makes it creative, right? It changes it slightly, but there's a couple of things you can do to drastically minimize hallucination. I won't say entirely eliminate it, because nothing's 100% accurate, but drastically reduce the capability on hallucinations. So a couple of things. One is what I mentioned before about using another tool to help search the data set. People are using the ChatGPT model trained in September 2020, well, data from September 2021, as this all-powerful, all-knowing being, and it's not, right? It has a lot of information. But when you give it this specific data set, so maybe you have training manuals, right, that your mechanics use or something, you search the documents using other tools. We've got a tool called Azure Cognitive Search, other search tools. You find the right information, you pass it to ChatGPT, and it gives you a natural language response, but with correct information based on your data set. The other thing, we've spoken a lot about responsible AI, a huge part of that's transparency. Where did you find that answer? And so if anyone's used Bing, your Bing experience, we offer citations. That's part of that. So we offer the user the ability to question the answer and go and find the source material to get the response. And this is all part of the education conversation as well. So should you trust it 100%? Do we trust anything 100%? But if we want to go and find out and learn more, we're offering that. Here's where I found the source. Even highlight in the documents where I've actually got the answer. So there's tons of ways to make it so that that hallucination starts training to.
I think we covered a lot of good, interesting topics, but this is about, from an investor's perspective, the word defensible moat has been a VC slang for 30 plus years now, being a serial entrepreneur. Can you give us some examples of where you see generative AI and defensible moat in the same sentence? So specifically, not looking for anything confidential within your portfolio, but where you see truly differentiated defensible moat. For example, if there was a model that was ready today to file 34 whatever dismissal motions, right when the alignment was done, with generative AI in the room, would that be a defensible moat? Or where do you see, types of defensible moat in this situation?
Yeah, so I guess I talked about the user experience one, which may seem very simple, but it actually is very important in the sense of being able to get the right output from the model. And so some other examples of defensible moats is maybe you are downloading or using an open source model, you're changing the weights of the model to fine tune specifically for use cases around your application. So that could be data wrangling, that could be the travel experience that I mentioned, and you're leveraging a data set that might be proprietary that you have, that you're sitting on, and fine tuning that model specifically to execute on a certain type of task. That would be a defensible moat that would be difficult for somebody like a big tech company to do overnight, maybe because they're very specifically focused on this vertical, training the model to a very specific type of task and solving a problem for a very specific type of customer. So that's one example. Hopefully that helps kind of at least frame the thinking of how we're considering it. I think when it comes to these large language models, there's still defensibility in having ML experts in the room that actually understand what the model is doing, right? There's not that many people that really have a strong expertise of how these large language models work. And so having some sort of that expertise, that background to understand that, paired with maybe a talented team that understands product, for example, how do I take this thing to market? That's a defensible moat, right? Team can be a very defensible moat. So it's not just about tech, but it's also about how do you take this thing to market? How do you sell it? So those are kind of things.
One more question.
My question is, how will it impact privacy rights, especially in future, because it's collecting data all the time now. Any answer?
So it's your mobile phone. So privacy is a big conversation. I don't think it's just exclusive to AI models, but I think this is the conversation before on it's trained on internet data. So there are, things in there that maybe might speak through filters and whatnot. But I think privacy is a bigger conversation, not just about AI models. It's just my 2 cents. Others?
Very good question. So I'll just highlight one. So recently, just 2 weeks ago, my research group won a British US competition on privacy preserving data sharing for generative AI. So the idea is that if numerous healthcare organizations or numerous financial organizations can collaborate with each other by sharing encrypted data in a way that the other organization cannot get access to the raw data or to the data, but a model can be trained out of that in order to then support each of the participating organizations because they contributed the data, then there is huge potential for this type of technology. So the British government and the US government are closely collaborating on some of these initiatives. So that's one reference point. In Meta, you can think about this as privacy preserving machine learning techniques are also coming to generative AI. And that will ensure that particularly for verticals like healthcare or finance, where sensitive information should not be leaked inside the model, there will be a lot of effort that we get put into it. The last entire decade was about representation. So we talk about generative AI as representation learning. I predict that the next entire decade is going to be about validation, right? So when you step up the game on not generation but validation, you will automatically start to solve these privacy preserving or privacy issues at scale, and that will help solve it.
Okay, so I'm Jia. I lead T-Mobile Digital Innovation. I heard Vikram, you mentioned your passion is innovation and accessibility. So the question to you and the other panelists is, if you can imagine in 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, how we can use generative AI to do AI for good for the people, the combination of innovation and accessibility.
Yeah, so in terms of accessibility, I mean, some of the things are already happening in terms of design and digital design and things like we're seeing in the market with like mid-journey and stability and so on. So, and kind of partly what we're also trying to work on is trying to make design easy for non-designers, trying to make things that were harder. So there's some of those that are already being worked on. Microsoft Copilot is doing a lot of work on the PowerPoint and making PowerPoint designs easy. So that's the part I am pretty sure that's the part where we're trying to push. But I don't know if there's a specific.
Accessibility means all the people who have impairment,
Yes.
Yeah. For the live audience, she's describing accessibility for individuals who have impairments of visual or hearing impairments, and how we can make that more. If there's opportunity with generative AI.
Yes, absolutely, and we're again seeing some of that already happening with videos automatically captioned, automatically translated, with text to speech becoming a core part of any application now. So there's like this is already core in generative AI to some degree, and it's just the accessibility is coming for free. But I'm sure there's other things like automatically generating sign languages and making that available for. And there are things, for example, that I know people will be working on is all these manuals and the chat interface itself, voice enabling that can unlock a lot of information that is not working today. So those are some examples.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be AI. One of my favorite uses of AI is to support accessibility needs for organizations and particularly with things like large language models and generative AI, I think making everyone aware of how we can make things more accessible. So one of my favorite features, not that it's a large language model generated or anything PowerPoint, is just simply the accessibility tool. You can go in and see how you make your PowerPoint slides more accessible for people. Imagine if large language models just did that for you as part of generation. So I think there's design principles as we build these features and capabilities to account for accessibility needs in different bits of software. So that for me is super exciting when we think about how we solve the problem for everyone, not just for a large group, but it makes it development.
Thank you. As each of yours final thought, what does, stemming from our last question, what does AI for good mean for you? And wear the hat of what you represent on today's panel.
That's a good question. So AI for good for me covers a few different areas that I'm going to go too long, but I definitely think there's AI for everyone as a component of doing AI for good, so making sure we're being as inclusive as possible. I think AI for good is also, as part of the responsible AI pipelines, being transparent and accountable for what we produce, and ultimately having that positive intent about what we're creating is going through the rigors and processes to create the betterment of society. That's kind of the three elements I think of when I consider AI.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think Madrona, it's making sure that we make investments that are AI for good as well. I think one example of that is our biotech practice, our intersections of innovation. A lot of that is going towards research for new drug development, leveraging these large language models to slip through large data sets to potentially create new drugs that can help cure cancer. So that's AI for good, leveraging these large language models in ways that can advance research 100 times faster than maybe we could before. So that's an example of AI for good from my perspective.
From my perspective, AI for good is unlocking data that's in one language. So the English language has a lot of knowledge. Khan Academy videos are mostly English videos, making them available to a billion people who don't speak English and who could benefit from all that information. That translation capabilities that generative AI offers, just unlocking data from anywhere to anybody. There's so much Chinese literature that should be made available to English speaking audience as well.
Yeah, I think of AI for good as specifically for me, it's all about healthcare and the multimodality of generative AI, where today AI-driven tool can read X-rays, read CT scans, look at vitals, come up with a very compelling predictive picture of the next best action that is most appropriate for a patient with chronic conditions in order to then assistively support them on their well-being journey is a great example of AI for good for me.
Thank you. All right, well, that closes out our panel. Join me in thanking this wonderful panel. It's been a really great discussion, and I want to thank Sabrina and Matt and Vikram and Amber for joining us today. It's a really unique panel to have so many different perspectives. We're one of the few organizations in town putting together programming like this for the community. For those of you who are not Thai Seattle members, take this opportunity to join us and be part of the community that's continuing to bring these topics forward. We have a little bit of time for some additional networking if you want to ask some of the panelists some questions. But real quickly, I just wanted to thank the committee that put this program together. Bharat and Amit from Mahindra, Kishore Kandvalia, our current president, and our other board members. If you're a board member, please raise your hand, Thai Seattle. These are the people that help make this organization run. And our wonderful executive director, Minnie Verma, she's around here somewhere. She makes all the back end things happen, and without her, we wouldn't be able to run such great programming. And thanks once again for Mahindra for hosting us, and for all of you joining us this evening. Have a great
Voice. Can you close it now?